Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Prize Podcast where we talk about how sports and the Christian worldview intersect one another. I'm Kyle Hunsinger. It's good to have you back on the show. I know it's been a hot minute. Number one, I've been getting over sickness, so I have been pretty much kind of under the weather and not able to record of recent. But I'm doing much better today. So I'm glad to be back on the show and to give you some updates on news and specifically sporting news and how it can connect back to the Bible and to Scripture. Um, Also, I know last week I was out because I was out of town and could not get to a recording device, and so it just happened to be a break for me. So that was a really good break I needed because sometimes you need a break every once in a while. You need a way to step away for a little bit and then be able to come back and feel refreshed. And so I feel that way after coming back from vacation. So what I want to do first is I want to talk about just some key things that are going on this weekend and really moving forward with this podcast. I really want to for this season of the podcast to really look in some updates that's going on for the weekend and how we can comment on those and how we can connect those back to the gospel. So that's what we're going to do. So be on the lookout for a longer episode that will take place once a week. And this will be kind of what it will look like unless something crazy happens and I want to post more than one. That's what it's going to look like moving forward. Number one, I wanted to bring up a couple of key things. One being the thing about Caitlyn Clark. Um, that I think it's very interesting that now from going 1-8 at the beginning of the season, and now with the Indiana Fever now getting bigger, she's getting better. What I mean by bigger, she's becoming more prominent, even more in the WNBA, even more than what she already was when she first came in. A lot of people started doubting her, and now she is the leading candidate for WNBA Rookie of the Year. She just recorded her second triple double of recent. And the Indiana Fever are looking really good right now. They're looking really good to have a postseason run, which is crazy to think because they just, last year were not very good. And that's the reason why they got the top pick with Caitlin Clark. So I think it's very interesting. Nothing to take away from Angel Reese. She has had a great season. But I think the sacrifice that has been put forward by Caitlin Clark to make herself better has been noticed, and people are starting to question that and say, okay, not in a bad way, but to say, hey, is this girl really the real deal? And so we're going to see that moving forward in the postseason to see how that carries out moving forward. One question that we have is really looking forward to college football and really looking into the upcoming week with a bunch of different games that I want to highlight. And then I want to highlight one team that I think is uh, really under a question mark and really who they are as a team. Um, so a couple of key games to look out for. Number one, Georgia Tech, which is now ranked, which is wild to me, because for years they have not been ranked. They've actually been pretty putrid, if we could be honest, when it comes to their football team. But Brett Key has got them in a good spot, and they're playing at Syracuse this coming Saturday at 12 o'clock. It'll be a lunchtime game. You will want to check that game out. I think that'll be a really good game just to see how things go forward for Georgia Tech. I think Georgia Tech will win that game. Also, you got Texas playing at Michigan in that same time frame. I think Texas will win that game. Texas looks like to be the better team. They're more talented. I think that they're going to have a better defense, and I think Michigan's still got to think about a lot about who who is their identity or what is their identity now with the new coach. Another key game you want to look out for is Oklahoma State. They'll be playing Arkansas. Arkansas, they're a okay team, but Oklahoma State really being at home is going to help them. So we'll see how that goes. Uh, let's see how Georgia looks coming off of their game against Clemson. They put the pedal to the metal against Clemson. Georgia looked really good in that game at the end of the second half. They play Tennessee Tech. I think that should be a blowout. Georgia will have no trouble with that. Surprise, surprise, Notre Dame is in the top five. They're number 5 in the current AP poll. They will play in Northern Illinois. I don't think they'll have any trouble with them. We'll see how that goes. And then Utah versus Baylor. That'll occur at 3:30 on September the 7th. That's on Saturday. Um, Utah will play Baylor. I don't know much about Baylor. I know Baylor used to have a really good football team, but of recent, has not had the best of luck. So we'll really see how they do against Utah. I think Utah will win that game. Another game I want to highlight is Ole Miss. Ole Miss playing Middle Tennessee State. I don't think they'll have any issue. Ole Miss is looking like a good college football playoff team in that. One of the most impressive teams that I saw in the ACC was Miami. Miami looked like they were a force to be reckoned with. They beat Florida last week. Now they play the mighty Florida A&M. No, no diss on them. Really great HBCU school. They will be playing them. I think Miami will steamroll them. Miami will have no trouble. Miami has a really talented team this year. It could be a point where they will be the U again, and we'll see what happens. And then you got Missouri, who's number 9. They'll play Buffalo at 7 o'clock that night. You're going to see some of those games come up. Really interesting game. Alabama hopes to get revenge uh, against South Florida. They beat South Florida last year, but Alabama is looking to have more of a convincing win. This will be at Tuscaloosa. I think Alabama will have no trouble. They looked very talented. Ryan Williams had a really great game the other day. Again, as other Alabama fans have said, it was Western Kentucky, so take that in mind. But also, it was a very convincing win, so I give Alabama credit for that. Very interesting game at 7:30 at night. Tennessee will play NC State at NC State. Tennessee is a very good team. NC State really struggled with Western Carolina last week, so we'll see how that goes. I think Tennessee's going to win that game. I think they'll play hard and they'll come in and beat the Wolfpack. Um, Another intriguing game that you want to keep on your radar for an upset alert is App State will play Clemson on Saturday at 8 o'clock at Death Valley in Clemson. Uh, Clemson's got a lot of questions they're going to have to look at and see. Okay, who are they really are as a team? Who do they want to be? What do they want to do moving forward? A lot of people are giving Dabo a lot of trouble. Basically, question his work on the transfer portal and his coaching and his player selection. And really, Cade Klubnik, is he really the guy moving forward? And my opinion is what he's showing forth is that he is not. Uh, I hope that he does better in this next game. They play Georgia, who is a really, really tough team, against App State. App State is still a good team, but they're going to have to show out. Clemson's going to have to come and play ball. They can't just come in and fly off the seat of their pants. They're really going to have to come in and play hard. One of the question marks that I have going into this weekend is who in the world is Florida State after this week? Um, Florida State has a lot of questions to really think through going into this weekend. Uh, they don't have a game this weekend. I'm just looking this up because I was wondering if they were going to have a game coming up. They had a really tough week. They lost to Georgia Tech in Dublin, Ireland, traveled back, and then they lost to Boston College. And Florida State was picked to be in the college football playoff by many different people. DJ Anglais, I always forget how you pronounce his name, Anglais, whatever. I just call him DJU. Has shown himself not to be the guy. I really want him to be the guy. I think he can be the guy. I think it's more of the mental than it is really the heart. I really believe he wants to play football. But is he mentally there? Is it really all here? So I'm praying and hoping that he gets better, and we'll see how things go. They play Memphis next Saturday, September the 14th. It'll be really interesting to see how that all plays out. But overall, their reputation right now is not looking very good. But that does not mean their season is over. It's only 2 losses. They can still recover. So we'll see how this goes. We'll see if they can recover from this and really press forward. Moving away from college football to talk about reputation and question marks going into the season, tonight is a game where the Ravens and the Chiefs will play. They'll play at the Chiefs. It'll be intriguing to see that. That'll be at 8:20. I believe that's on NBC, but I can stand corrected on that. I know that tomorrow night, Friday night, which is oddly enough a Friday game, the Packers and the Eagles will play one another. They will play in Brazil, and that should be a really interesting game to have an international play with that. Uh, then you've got an NFC South matchup on Sunday, September the 8th. You've got the Panthers playing the Saints. Panthers have got a lot of question marks. They had a really rough season last year. So it'll be really intriguing to see, okay, where do they come into all of this? How do they play with Bryce Young? Who is going to step up and be their main offensive target? Who's going to give them the most production? That'll be what they'll have to really look at. I still believe the Saints are going to win, but I predict the Panthers should at least get slightly better this year under the helm with Bryce Young as the quarterback. Another intriguing game will be the Houston Texans at the Indianapolis Colts. You'll be interested to see the quarterback matchup there, and I think the Houston Texans will come away from the win. Uh, the Steelers play the Falcons. They'll play at the Falcons. Russell Wilson starting at quarterback for the Steelers. Will he be the one, or will Justin Fields have to come in and play cleanup? We'll have to see about that. Then you also got I'm forgetting his name right off the top of my head. Kirk Cousins. He's going to be the quarterback for the Atlanta Falcons. So we'll see how that all plays out. Another big game that will be very intriguing to see is the Las Vegas Raiders versus the Los Angeles Chargers. Um, you'll have a new coach there with Chargers, with Harbaugh, and really seeing can he still do the NFL coaching job, and really seeing how that goes, and what is their reputation going to be this season. And probably the biggest game, which will be on a Monday night, September the 9th, will be the Jets. The Jets at the 49ers. I love this matchup. Brock Purdy versus, drumroll please, Aaron Rodgers. And Aaron Rodgers is coming back from an Achilles tear from last season. It was the infamous first game back where he's bringing in the American flag and he tears his Achilles. And so I'm hoping that maybe, just maybe, he will be spared from another injury. So how does all of this mesh together to form how we react as Christians in the sporting news today? I really wanted to tackle a couple different words that I just emphasized throughout this podcast. Number one is uh, being spared. The other one is sacrifice, and the other one is a question. In my study of Exodus this week, I've been talking about sacrifice because our students are now walking to a passage about the Passover. And through Exodus 12:1 through 13:16, it's leading into God's rescue of his people. One of the things that he calls them to do is to participate in the Passover meal. In this Passover meal, there had to be a lamb, a Passover lamb to be sacrificed. There had to be unleavened bread, not leavened bread, because the unleavened bread was representative of them coming quickly out of the land of Egypt so that they could escape and go into the promised land and escape by the Exodus, which God had called them to do. Um, so then, what was going to be interesting with the slaughtering of the Passover lamb is they would mark their doors of their homes to show that they were covered or they would be atoned for by the blood of a spotless lamb. So that when the destroyer or the angel of death came on the door, he would pass over the home of the people who took shelter in God's sacrifice. Really interesting stuff there, because one of the big things that comes up in that text is the question mark. When your children ask you, what does this mean? Why do you celebrate this? And I think it's very key for us to look at this even in sports and even in the common life in general is this. Why do we celebrate? Why do we celebrate wins? Why do we celebrate when a team loses and we are the ones that are put on the pedestal? Why do we celebrate milestones in life? Why do we do these things? Well, number one, I think it highlights the fact that the sacrifice that was put into the game, the sacrifice that teams put into the game of the off-season workouts, the the time and the obedience of actually being in the weight room, the obedience to a strict diet, the obedience to coming to summer workouts and to camp, and all of these different things are coming forth in fruition to show, okay, which team's going to win and come out on the other side, and which one won't be spared and will have different problems later on because of loss. And I think that's something we all have to deal with at times. Um, The other thing that I thought very interesting was a story that really highlighted this really well is this past weekend as I was watching the North Carolina-Minnesota game. A player named Max Johnson was injured. He broke his femur. And how many sacrifices that guy made to be back on the football field, of being at Texas A&M, being at LSU, just trying to start somewhere. And then he goes to North Carolina, and essentially his career for that year is over. He will not be able to play for the rest of the year. And it was very sad to watch his parents on the sidelines, Brad Johnson and his mom, um, just to see the agony that their son was not spared from hurt, that their son was not spared from this pain. And I think that's very telling for a lot of us, because a lot of us have felt that way. God, why have you not spared us from the pain or from suffering or for different things that go on? Why did you not spare us from this loss? And it's maybe much deeper than a game that you lose, maybe losing a loved one. Why not? Why do we experience these things? I think all of these questions can be met with the sacrifice that was made, the ultimate sacrifice, that there was a Passover lamb that was sacrificed for us, and it was the main ultimate Passover lamb, Jesus, who is perfect, fully man, fully God, perfect in every way. And we have a thing as a church where we celebrate that. Oddly enough, we celebrate a sacrifice that was made for us because we know the proof that the sacrifice worked was because there was a resurrection. And so we live in a hope in light of that sacrifice. So if you're in a church, you celebrate this by what? Partaking of the Lord's Supper. When you drink the juice or you drink the wine or you eat the bread, you are reminded of how you escaped, you were spared from sin and death and from the wrath of God that we deserve in hell. And so my prayer for you today, as you remember this and you connect this back to the gospel, is this. Number one, think about how God has spared you from heartache or from trouble. But maybe think about maybe the suffering that you have experienced, but think about, how has Jesus identified in your suffering by his sacrifice? How is it that by his blood he's atoned for your sin and he's cleansed you of your sin and my sin? And how now, yeah, you may experience suffering, but you experience suffering with sustaining power because of the sacrifice and the resurrection of Jesus. And then thirdly, the question you may want to ask is, why do you celebrate? Just like how when you come with a sports team or whatever, and someone asks, why do you celebrate a win? Well, we celebrate a win because there's a victory. And so why do we celebrate the Lord's Supper? Why do we celebrate a Passover that has so much darkness and has so much deep, utter just despair at times, thinking about how Jesus was betrayed? Because we know, because Jesus is betrayed, it's a very good thing, because he went to the cross and he died for us. And through betrayal, we actually can see the grace and mercy of God. We can actually see there's something better ahead for us. There's something better ahead because of what happened after. That 3 days later, there is a resurrection. That after death, we don't just stay dead, we actually can rise from the grave because of what Jesus has done for us. So, my prayer for you is you remember the distinguishing mark of what makes you different. What makes you different as the people of God? What makes you different to where you can celebrate victory in light of a sacrifice? And when your kids ask you, why do we do this? Why do we celebrate? You celebrate because ultimately you know through sacrifice there came a victory. And here's the cool part about the whole thing. The sacrificed lamb is referenced again in the end times in the book of Revelation. And it says that he is the one that sits on the throne. And that you can rest in today as we come to the end of our show. Thank you for joining in on the Prize Podcast, where we talk about sports and the Christian worldview intersect one another. I hope you have a fantastic day. If you would like to know more information about me, you can email me at pursuetheprize@gmail.com for any questions about today's show. Also, you can follow me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at KMoneyDH. It's been a pleasure to be with you. I hope you have a wonderful weekend and have a great weekend enjoying sports. But more importantly, I pray that you would remember why Jesus has died for you and the victory that you have because he rose from the grave. Have a great week, and we'll see you later.